Well, hey again, YouTube. Rob Ryder here. And today we're going to talk about property tax fraud and swindle using the mail, which is actually a federal crime under 18 U.S.C. 1341. We're going to see if we can tie it together because of this information that is on a particular tax assessment and a tax bill for somebody here in Michigan. I'm not saying this is the same on everybody's everywhere, but I'm saying that it's fraud one way or the other. And so I'll just say right now, if you don't mind and want me to share your assessment and tax bill information in a video, and I'll try to cover up all your personal information the best I can, but mistakes are made. I'll just do the best I can. I'd like to show some other variations and see if we can decipher those. But for our example, we're going to use this one where this information with the asterisks and the auto and the 5-digit, the X's are actually a zip code, and this barcode are on the documents that are being given to the quote unquote taxpayer to pay the tax. And turns out all this shit can be deciphered. You can actually download a program to do barcodes to use on a smartphone, but I'm not really smartphone illiterate, or I am a smartphone illiterate. I don't really want to learn how to use one. So I did it the old-fashioned way where, if it goes down, that's called a D, and if it's in the middle, that's a T, and if it's full, well, that's an F, and if it's up above, then it's an A. And you can just go figure out what all these are and get this code and find a program online where you can throw it in, and it'll tell you what it says. That's how it's supposed to work. So let's find out. Again, I'm Rob Ryder. My email address is courtofrecord at AOL.com, right? No S's, court of record, not courts of records or something like that. So yeah, if you have a tax assessment, notice of assessment, I guess it would be called in Michigan. That's what they send you. They send you a notice of assessment, and then eventually they send you a tax bill. So that's the stuff we're going to look at and compare it to the law, look at some postal books, and see what it all means. So give me a second to load a few things up and we'll get started. So hey, let's get this one on the way right off the top, right? This is out of Title 18 of the United States Code, which has to do with crimes and criminal procedure, where it says in 18 U.S.C. 1341, fraud and swindles. Whoever having devised or intended to devise any scheme or artifice to defraud or to obtain money or property by means of false or fraudulent pretenses, I'm saying that's what's happening, places in any post office or authorized depository for mail matter, any matter or thing, whatever, to be sent or delivered by the Postal Service, or deposits or causes to be deposited any matter or thing, whatever, to be sent or delivered by a private or commercial interstate carrier, knowingly causes to be delivered by mail or such carrier according to the direction thereon, or at the place at which it is directed to be delivered by the person to whom it is addressed, any such matter and thing shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 20 years or both. Pretty strong stuff. I wonder if we can prove that's happening. So let's look at what they said in Michigan. It's from the Michigan Department of Treasury. It's one of their forms, L4400, Notice of Assessment, Taxable Valuation, and Property Classification. This was sent to the victim that we're using as our example. And it's from Cotterville Township, and it had another line that has an address, and it says this is the parcel number. And in my last video, and I'll show it again, right off the bat, this is the wrong style of parcel number for it to be considered a parcel identification number under the law, which requires that this format be in a particular manner, which is to have 5 sets of numbers, and this has 4. And in those 5 sets of numbers, it's first two, it's 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, for a total of 12 digits. And it's supposed to start with what the county code is, and then what township in the county, and then what section in the county, and, down to your particular parcel. Well, right off the bat, that's incorrect. And then it shows a property address, but there's no city, state, or zip located. And we got the owner's name and address / person named on assessment roll. So, could be either or, sounds like. But what it has at the very top is it has this line here, auto 5-digit with the zip code 48001, and then this barcode underneath it. And I don't have the envelope this came in. This is the problem. So if you do send me your notice of assessment or tax bill, send the envelope also, right? Picture of the envelope. See what it has to say. Because it has its own barcode on it. So, but this is what's on there, and it's supposed to be the legal description, which isn't complete. And, there's no amounts for the taxes. It's just a number, but there's no dollar sign. It says it changed by $14, but that's the only place on this form where it ever uses a dollar sign. Well, that ends up generating a tax bill, right? Summer tax bill. And we got the same incorrect property description. And then it says school. It gives this number. And then East China Township School. Well, there is no East China Township School. If, you did it by what you see when you walk around, you'd say, well, for this particular property, it's in the East China School District. That's the proper name of the school district. So it's not using the proper name of the school district. And it goes on to say that this was split from, another incorrect number. Again, it's not 22233, it's 2343. Incorrect. And there's no amounts, just numbers. Right? So none of that seems right. I just really want a quick look at, because I happen to find this one online. So this is what a notice of assessment looks like according to the City of Ann Arbor, where it should say City of Ann Arbor, then have Assessor's Office. On ours, it doesn't say Assessor's Office. It has somebody's name who's supposed to be the assessor, but it doesn't say it's the Assessor's Office. And then there's the parcel number, right? 22333. That's the proper method to do this thing. But here again, they don't have anything here about the numbers, right? It doesn't say what the value is in dollars. So, but it does have property address having the city, the state, and the zip code. Go back and look at ours. We got no city, state, zip. We don't have a 22233. We got somebody's name here where apparently it should say the assessor's office, at least according to the state. And we got this auto digit stuff in this barcode, and that stuff wasn't on the example from Ann Arbor. So, whether they do it this way everywhere or not, I don't know. But we're going to look at what they did to the gentleman that we're talking about. Well, on the St. Clair County website, they have a place to look at parcel details. So here's the property record for Cotterville Township, according to the, this is coming from the county treasurer's office, where it has a local assessing officer, which was the same name on the assessment. But it says the parcel number is, 22343. Well, again, that 22233 is what it needs to be. So it's an improper parcel number, according to the State Taxing Commission, which determined what the parcel number had to be. They can either use the full legal description, or they can assign it a property identification number, so they don't have to write this whole thing out every time. It's easier to find, but it has to be in a particular format, or they had to have gotten special permission. And these are all things that can be checked later, but from the beginning, it doesn't follow the state's format. And it talks about the taxpayer, and there's that school district, East China Township School District. Well, there is no such place. But as it turned out, on this particular county, after you looked at your parcel details, if you went to the bottom, it'd say tax rolls. And if you clicked on it, it would take you to a list of all the different tax rolls for the townships or local jurisdictions within the county, cities, villages, so forth. And sure enough, on page, so this is the one for Cotterville Township, and apparently there's 679 pages of parcels, not 679 parcels, but pages of parcels. And what do they put here for the parcel number? They put 7417. Well, again, that's not 22233. It's incorrect. So you're paying the tax for property that you don't claim to own. And that's what you need to point out. Say, I don't claim to own the shit that you're taxing, right? Because yours is 22233. 74 is the proper number for the code. So if you were to go to your state and put in, like here, Michigan county codes, it'll list there's like 83 counties in Michigan. Each one has a 2-digit number, that type of thing, right? That's what goes here. St. Clair County is 74. So 74 is correct, but it's supposed to be separated from the 17. And this isn't supposed to have 4. So, it's wrong. Don't need to go any further. The point is, they're doing this in every one, right? There's 679 pages of the same fucking bullshit happening. And then it says owner's name, East China Township School District. Well, that isn't you. They're giving you as the mailing address, right? But the owner's name is East China Township School District. They're supposed to be paying this fucking tax. But there is no East China Township School District. So somebody has a problem. It sounds like a fraud and a swindle to me. So, let's see if it is. And just real quick, here's another, kind of the same. This is a tax statement for winter 2023. Property ID, X. No, not an X. That's showing us not in a county, right? It's not assigned to any county. And it's not 22, well, I guess it is 2233, right? But they don't have the first two. And why I say that, this comes out of the assessor's manual put out by the State Tax Commission, and page 32, it starts talking about numbering of property descriptions and why they can do it and so forth, and that they're supposed to use this SIDWIL system. That's what the state's recommending. And so the standard SIDWIL system, or Parcel Identification PIN, contains 12 digits or a combination of county code, government survey, township, section, quarter, or subdivision, block number, and parcel number. Grouped like this: 2 digits for the county, 2 digits for the geographical township, that'd be the survey township, right? 2 digits for the survey section number, 3 digits for the quarter section or subdivision block number, and then 3 digits for the individual parcel number. Well, it'd be nice if they had done it that way, but that's not how they did it. In fact, if we look, we got this, supposed to be a PIN, and if they're going to use a PIN, it has to be by the public land survey system, right? Townships, sections, quarters, parcels, with a county code at the front. But that isn't what they use. They use this meets and bounds, which is actually, for this particular property, was correct when it was first surveyed, but it was surveyed by the French back in the 1700s. This area is down by Detroit, St. Clair River, and all that used to be French territory. Then it became English territory. And then the day before, the first governor of Michigan territory showed up, who happened to be a surveyor, by the way, was the day of the Great Fire of Detroit, and all the records got burned. And so they had to go and resurvey everything, and they did it by the public land survey system. But that's not the description that they're using. And so, as I showed last week, or my last video, which was property tax scam reveal, if you don't agree with your assessment, you're supposed to petition the Board of Review, which Nate had done before by writing a letter, and then somebody filed the petition to the Board of Review for him, He had nothing to do with it, but it wasn't signed down here at the bottom and so forth. And so I said, well, Nate, let's do it again, right? Do it this way. Put your full legal name, put the township, St. Clair. Say that this part isn't applicable because this is only dealing with assessed value, tentative tax value, property classification, and qualified agricultural exemption, right? Assessed value, tentative taxable value, classification, qualified agricultural property exemption. Well, you don't have those. You want taxable status, right? That it's not taxable because you don't claim to own it. So, anyways, you leave that blank. Come down here. You don't do any of these because each of these go to one of these up here. Got assessment, taxable value, classification. So, what is your reason? And this is what we put at the time that this would be the proper style of number for Nate. That this parcel, recognized by the county treasurer for my parcel, is so erroneously and defectively described in the assessment and tax rolls, it cannot be correctly and easily ascertained and must be exempted from taxation. I'm unjustly taxed for parcel, this is the number that's on his paperwork, a parcel number that does not conform to the real estate index number system authorized by the State Tax Commission. I am not the owner of parcel 17,015,0013,020, nor am I its taxpayer. You got to sign it and send it in. Well, Nate did this. And he sent it in on Monday, and then yesterday he got an email from the assessor. So, 3 days, he probably got this in the mail. Although we don't know that because that isn't what she talked about in her answer back to him in an email. She's just talking about going back to the original thing he was complaining about, which is, in his case, between 2005 or 2025, 2026 assessments, they had decided that his property wasn't being farmed and therefore he had to pay the 18 mil school tax that he hadn't had to pay before, along with all the other taxes. So at first, that's what he was complaining about, just that. But that's before he realized that, hey, this whole thing is a fucking mess, right? It's a fraud and a swindle. And so, yeah, he's going to, he can talk to her and do whatever, but I want to take this all the way to the end and say this is a fraud and swindle and get the powers that be to agree. So, anyways, over the last few days, I said, well, let me go ask Grok some questions about this information that's on this window right here. Because this window probably showed, or this information probably showed up through a window on an envelope, right? And I don't have the envelope to confirm that, but Nate believes it was a window envelope. And so, this would be the information showing through the window that it's supposed to be addressed to and so forth and so on. So what did all this stuff mean? So I asked Grok real quick, and we'll just get the Reader's Digest version here. Right where it says 5-digit, that indicates the mail has been pre-sorted by the sender, well, that would be the assessor, or their mailing service, down to the full 5-digit zip code level. This is one of the finer and cheaper pre-sort levels in USPS bulk mailing. The sender grouped at least the minimum required number of pieces, usually 150, going to the exact same 5-digit zip code. Well, in our case, then it's 5-digit 48001. So the assessor, whoever mailed this, was mailing it to zip code 48001. But it got delivered to 48039. Well, then why did it go to 48001? That's a question to ask off the bat, and we'll go from there. Well, as it turns out, that 5-digit with the zip code, that falls under the Domestic Mail Manual, Section 203, having to do with basic postage statements, documentation, preparation standards. And it's called an optional endorsement line. And we go down and look, an optional endorsement line, OEL, may be used to label bundles instead of applying pressure-sensitive, including the correct zip code listed, right? So they use 48001. That's where they wanted it delivered to. OEL must show carrier route information or the type of bundle zip code information exhibited in 711. Oh, it must show carrier route information, must, or the type of bundle and zip code information as shown in the exhibit, which it's on the next page. And so here's your choices, right? Information that corresponds to the sortation level of the tray in which the pieces are placed, the zip code. For use, the OELs must include the 3-digit zip code prefix or the 5-digit zip code as required. So these are all the different things that line can show, right? And we had a 5-digit. So really it should just be a bunch of asterisks and a 5-digit, with a zip code. But it could be, if they're doing a carrier route, it could look like this. That isn't how ours look, but it could. And yeah, okay. So I'm going to take that and go over here and look at this where it's Quick Service Guide 708. Kind of talking about the same thing, right? The optional information lines. So one is the optional endorsement line, the OEL, carrier route information, ACS code, mailer key line. The OEL and the carrier route information line may be printed on the mail piece or label when address is printed. Okay, well, that's what they did. They printed it on there. The mailer may prepare mailings without applying pressure-sensitive labels to the top mail piece of the bundles by using a special OEL above the address block or on the address label on the top of the mail piece or the bundle. Right? So using the OEL above the address block. Well, that's, basically what they did. Yeah, if we're saying this is the address block, well, right above it they put this, but there shouldn't be any auto in there because it should just be a bunch of asterisks. Now we see there are a couple of exceptions, but auto isn't one of them. Okay, so anyways, zip code, except for carrier route bundles, the OEL must include the appropriate zip code information. Mailers receiving address corrections through address change service may use the first 8 positions on the left side of the OEL for the ACS participant code. So back here, we got all these asterisks before. If they're going to have address correction, then there would be something here to replace these asterisks in the first 8 positions. Let's see what we got. Oh, so they look something like this. A 5-digit bundles use that. Okay. So I don't see where. Okay, optional endorsement line, 5-digit. Right, central. So that's basically what we're looking at, right? This is what it should have looked like, unless they were asking for address correction. Right? And with address correction, then there would be 8 digits at the very beginning of this line, and then a couple of asterisks, to fill in the space. But that isn't what it has. It's got the word auto stuck in here. And, so I had Grok go look for any manual that ever used auto that, the post office said you could use auto in one of their manuals, and it doesn't exist. It's a fabrication. It's a fraud and a swindle. So at the end of the day, if it was all done right, then this would have looked something like, if they had to use an address thing, it would have been here. There would have been a bunch of things, asterisks, and then sort level. Well, we have 5-digit. We don't have car RT sort. That is one. But it would have just said 5-digit and then had a 5-digit zip code. We don't have any internal key lines. So that wouldn't have been there. Then we got information, attention line, library, so forth. And then that down there, another barcode. And that was the next thing I asked Grok. He said, "Hey, if you can," Grok said it couldn't read the barcode itself because it was too fuzzy. But I could go do this thing online or through a smartphone, or if I just gave it the letters and figured it out myself, it would tell me what it said. So this is our string, right? The daft, where full is the tallest. D is the bottom half, A is the ascender, and then T is the tracker. Okay. When decoded properly, the 65 character string converts into a 31 digit number that consists of useful information about the mailing. 31 digit decoder number is a whole bunch of zeros and then 48039169020, which, as it turns out, we'll see that where the first two are, that should have been the standard pre-sort. Service identification type, what type of service is it? Is it basic marketing mail? Is it full service? I mean, is it first class mail? Is it what? Because one of the things about the notice of assessment is it must be mailed first class mail. And because first class mail has securities that no other mail that is done by the USPS has. It's the original mail, right? Mail used to be carried in a mail pouch, like chain mail, so that people couldn't get into it. This is old English common law. Mailer ID, right? The ID assigned to the sender. Well, it had all fucking zeros, so who sent it? And a serial number, unique sequence of numbers for the specific piece within the mailing job, and there isn't one. And then the routing code, which is the full 11-digit delivery point. And so we need to talk about delivery point for a second. There's actually, you got zip code 5 digits, and you got a +4 making 9 digits. Well, then actually there's 3 more digits you can put at the end to make a delivery point, which is a unique delivery point in the entirety of the United States. It's the only one of its kind. And it's done in a particular way. I'm going to cover this more in another video. But when we fill out our change of mailing address forms for the post office, we don't put that we're claiming the delivery point. We just do the first, the zip code and the +4. And so we are not, as far as the UPS is concerned, necessarily tied to that. Although we could be if we just changed our form and included it. That's my belief. So I'm going to go try to do that, see what happens. Because there could be mail that has to go specifically to you, and they have in the barcode down to the last detail who it's supposed to go to. And if it doesn't, the two don't match, they won't send it to you. Return to sender type of thing. Because really this 11-digit, or I'm going to say 12-digit zip code, when it's all done, is really all you should need to get your mail delivered to you. You should have your name. So Robert Allen Wertluski, and then Rockford, Michigan, and then a 12-digit zip code. I wouldn't have to put my street on there. Nobody has to know where I live for me to get my mail. And that isn't happening, and that's because we're not doing this delivery point correctly. Kind of off the subject, but that's what's happening, right? That's what that's supposed to be. So that's where it was routed to, but we don't know who mailed it. We don't know how it was mailed, and we don't know if it was sorted, and there's no serial number. So all that stuff is supposed to be there. I can't believe that they're allowed to use zeros and then mail it here. And the only one that really knows is probably the post office, and we'll have to, do a little more research on this. But right, the intended delivery address according to the barcode is 480391690, which is Nate's street address's zip code for where he had his mailbox at, like a UPS store where you can get a private mailbox type of thing. Right, so your PMB address is Marine City, not 48001. Yeah, that's where it shows at the top that it was sorted to go to. So it's just all sorts of errors and omissions, and someday we may get to the bottom of it. So again, I'm just pointing out all the things that you can find on your paperwork if you just take a minute and look at it. Do a little reading on certain parts of your tax code and so forth. And I'm far from being an expert, but I was able to do it by just looking at the form and reading what it said. Say, well, this doesn't look right, and do a little more research and asking Grok a question, and pretty soon you get a much fuller picture of what's going on. And what is going on is a fraud and a swindle using the mail. All right, property tax fraud and swindle using the mail. There is no auto. Now, I know that this is in many pieces of mail people have gotten. If you go look, you're going to find this top line right here on it. And it's going to have this barcode. If you deciphered it, you're going to find out, well, all this shit here is zeros. And then, the only thing on there is the delivery point address it's going to be delivered to. But it's a mismatch, and we don't know who sent it. So it's a fraud and swindle. Okay, I'm going to leave it there for today. You all have a happy Easter, and the Lord has risen. Here comes Easter. See you now.